I've actually got a lot more questions than I've got answers. I noticed that a lot of people have actually been saying what they're actually going to do. Well, I haven't got a clue, but anyhow. But as I've been coming to grips with the topic over the last few weeks in this role, it's become obvious to me that there is this huge range of activities that are already out there when it comes to remote education. And the question was posed to me in a ABC radio interview, well, hasn't all this stuff been done before? And when you look at the different activities that come as part of a suite of interventions that are designed to improve outcomes for remote Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islanders, it seems like, yes, it's already been done before. There's a whole lot of stuff that's going on there. We should know what works and what doesn't work, and we should know by now whether or not these things are effective. Indeed, I would have expected that after years of investment in remote education that we would be starting to see some tangible results. But as the work that Chris Duncan has been doing seems to demonstrate to me, is that there really isn't any evidence of tangible results. But all of these activities seem to have some common elements. They tend to be top-down initiatives. They are generated from out of policies that come from governments, but whether they're based in Canberra or Darwin. And there seems to be very little input from local communities as to what it is that they want for their education futures. And often the initiatives are targeted or very selective. So for example, Clontarf and Polypharma, which are espoused as being wonderful programs, are really targeted at the cream of the crop, if you like, or very tightly focused around something like football or key leaders. And often the emphasis is on process. In other words, if you get the process right, then you can assume that the outcomes are going to be right. All of these activities are full of assumptions about what the outcomes are going to be or ought to be, but with very little evidence based on evaluations about the real impact of those initiatives. And coupled with being top-down, the perspectives from which these initiatives come tend to be from the mainstream. In other words, the assumptions that these programs come with are based around the assumptions that mainstream educators or mainstream policymakers have as they assume the outcomes but don't actually measure the results. So the kind of questions that I have are built around these 4 dot points. As it is at the moment, the arrows for delivery of services to communities seems to go the other way, in that there is a demand for outcomes that comes from policy that then leads to what is perceived to be the community's aspirations. But one of the things that I'd like to be able to do is turn that around on its head and start with community aspirations and then look at how we can actually influence policy so that we get the demand-driven outcomes from the community rather than necessarily only from government or mainstream educators. So in this project, what I'd like to be able to answer, I suppose, is some of these key questions. What would a remote education system look like that was community-led and demand-driven, with schooling that is valued and valuable to the local community? And that education system is not just about the school and the community. In fact, often the education system is perceived to be solely about the school and the educators, and the students and the community are sort of out in the periphery there. It's almost like the assumption that schools are great without kids. And sadly, that's what often happens. So, what would policy and bureaucracy look like if it was to support this system? If we were going to develop a new kind of system that was responsive to community needs and aspirations, what would the policy look like? And then as part of that, how does school leadership, the principals, the teaching staff, those that are the drivers behind education in remote communities, how does that leadership fit with community aspirations in terms of the local livelihood opportunities and cultural maintenance, for example? So there are a number of opportunities in this particular project. The task, as I see it, is pretty huge. But one of the things that I'd like to be able to generate from this project is the evidence that's required to demonstrate that these things do work, and they work well, or that they don't work, and we know that they don't work. So that's about it from me.